on her knees, hands laced behind her head. Gravel pressed into her shins through thin scrub pants. "Officer, I'm a doctor. Did I ask what you are? Get down, all the way." Dr. Renata Ashworth lowered herself the rest of the way to the cold pavement. Her fingers trembled, not from fear exactly, but from the particular kind of exhaustion that comes from having done this calculation before. How slow to move, how soft to speak, how to disappear inside her own compliance. Sheriff Walt Brennigan stood over her, thumbs hooked in his belt, rocking back on his heels like a man inspecting livestock. "Surgical scrubs," he said, drawing the words out, tasting them. "That's a new one." He reached down and lifted the hospital badge hanging from her neck, studied it, let it drop against her chest like it weighed nothing. Cute costume. He turned to the deputy beside him and grinned, the kind of grin that had never once cost him anything. "Run her in. I've kept this county clean for 2 decades. One more off the street won't hurt my record." Renata said nothing. She breathed, slow. Counted in her head the way her mother taught her. 4 in, hold, 6 out. Because what Sheriff Brennigan did not know, what nobody on that dark stretch of county road knew yet, was about to end his career in a way none of them could have predicted. He really believed he held all the cards that night. Let's go back 6 hours and see how wrong a man can be. The operating room lights at Magnolia Ridge Regional hummed their familiar hum, and Renata stood over an open chest cavity with her hands steady as stone. A 19-year-old kid, motorcycle versus guardrail, a lung collapsing faster than the monitors could keep up with. "Clamp," she said, calm as if she were ordering lunch. The scrub nurse passed it without looking up. Renata's fingers moved the way they always did when it mattered most, unhurried, exact 23 years of practice condensed into each motion. The bleeding slowed. The numbers on the monitor climbed back toward something survivable. "He's going to make it," she said, peeling off her gloves. "Let's close." That was the second life she'd saved before lunch. The first had been a 60-year-old grandmother whose heart had simply stopped on the cath lab table, and Renata had it beating again inside 4 minutes. This was who Renata Ashworth was, chief of cardiothoracic surgery at Magnolia Ridge Regional, 23 years in the field. A surgical success rate that out-of-state hospital boards had tried to poach for a decade, until Whitcomb Memorial's own founding family, old money, old name, the kind that built half the county's roads, had personally courted her away from Atlanta 4 years back with a salary nobody refused. But none of that mattered the second she crossed the county line into Hollis Bend. Hollis Bend was the sort of place that photographed beautifully. White picket fences nobody had to repaint because nobody who lived there ever weathered. Lawns mowed in diagonal stripes. A median income that made the local paper proud twice a year. 96% of the town was white, and the remaining 4% understood without ever being told outright exactly which streets were theirs to walk after dark and which weren't. Renata had lived there 3 years. In that time, a clerk at the hardware store had twice asked to see 2 forms of ID for a cash purchase. A neighbor 2 doors down had never once returned a wave. She didn't talk about it. She didn't post about it. She got up, she saved lives, she drove home, and she absorbed the cost of living somewhere that had decided, quietly and permanently, that she was a guest who'd overstayed. It was a Thursday evening in late September, the sky doing that burnt orange thing it does, right before full dark. Renata pulled out of the hospital lot in her gray Honda Pilot, not flashy, not new, chosen specifically because it drew no eyes. Her father had taught her that calculus when she was 14. Drive something forgettable, dress unremarkably, never give them a single excuse, because a single excuse is all some people need. On the radio, NPR played low. Her phone buzzed once on the passenger seat, a text from her son. "Mom, don't forget you said pizza tonight." She smiled and voice texted back without taking her eyes off the road. On it, 15 minutes. The speed limit on Coldwater Lane was 30. Renata did 26. Always under, always careful. A habit so deep it had stopped feeling like fear and started feeling like breathing. What Renata didn't know was that Sheriff Walt Brennigan had run Hollis Bend's department for 19 years, answering to nobody who mattered. He golfed with the county commissioner on Fridays. He sat on the school board, unopposed, for over a decade. In the last 18 months alone, 5 formal complaints of excessive force had been filed against his deputies. Every single complainant was black. Every single complaint had been closed by Brennigan himself, marked unfounded, filed, forgotten. Tonight he was parked on the shoulder of Coldwater Lane, with his window down, watching the gray pilot approach through the dying light. He lifted his radio. "Tesler, I got one coming south on Coldwater. Don't need the plates. Pull her." The lights came on behind her like something that had already been decided before she ever got in the car. Renata's stomach dropped, not from guilt, from history. She pulled onto the shoulder, cut the engine, cut the radio, set both hands at 10 and 2 with her fingers spread wide where they could be seen. This wasn't her first time being stopped for the crime of existing in the wrong skin in the wrong neighborhood. Her father's voice rose up out of memory, the same words he'd drilled into her at 16. Hands visible, no sudden moves. "Yes, sir. No, sir. Stay alive first. Be angry later. Somewhere safe." Gravel crunched. A flashlight swept across her mirror and into her eyes. Deputy Cole Tesler appeared at the window. Young, jaw tight, one hand resting on his holster like he expected a gunfight in a Honda. Lice and registration. "Of course, officer. My wallet's in my back pocket. I'm reaching slow. Don't narrate it. Just hand it over." She moved like a woman diffusing something. He snatched the wallet, flipped it open, glanced at her license, glanced at her, glanced at the car. "This your vehicle?" "Yes, sir." "You sure?" "I'm sure." He shone the light directly into her eyes and held it there. She didn't flinch. "Step out of the car." "May I ask why I've been stopped?" "You may not. Out, now." She unbuckled slowly, stepped onto the gravel with her hands half raised, the cool evening air finding every gap in her thin scrubs. Tesler took her by the shoulder and turned her toward the hood. The metal had already gone cold. That's when the second cruiser rolled up, headlights washing the whole tableau into something that looked, from a passing car, exactly like what it was. A black woman in medical scrubs, palms flat on a hood, an officer looming behind her. Sheriff Brennigan got out unhurried, straightened his belt, walked over like a landlord inspecting a tenant who'd fallen behind on rent. "Well, well, what've we got?" "Not a question." "Pulled her over heading south, Sheriff," Tesler said. "Cooperative, but something's off." "Something's always off with this kind," Brennigan said, circling her slow, boots grinding gravel. "Nice little car for a woman in pajamas." "These are surgical scrubs, sir. I'm Dr. Renata Ashworth, Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery at Whitcomb Memorial. My badge is right here." Brennigan looked at the badge, read it, and laughed. The laugh of a man hearing a child claim to be an astronaut. "Chief of Surgery? Sure, and I'm the governor." He plucked the lanyard off her neck and tossed it onto the car roof like trash. "I think you found that costume in a donation bin somewhere. I think this car isn't yours either, and I think you've got about 10 seconds to give me a reason I shouldn't tear it apart." "You'd need consent or a warrant, Sheriff." Silence. He leaned in close enough that she felt his breath on her neck. "Sweetheart, out here. I am the warrant." He snapped his fingers at Tesler. "Open it up." Tesler pulled the passenger door wide and started emptying the car onto the shoulder. A stack of cardiology journals, a stethoscope case, a sterile bag of surgical clamps and forceps, a protein bar, a half-empty water bottle. He held up the instrument bag. "Sheriff, what's this?" Brennigan unzipped it, looked at the clamps glinting under his flashlight. "Tools Renata used to keep human hearts beating." "Looks like burglary tools to me." He smiled. "Bag it. Those are surgical instruments. There's an inventory tag inside with my name on it." He didn't check, didn't even glance down. "You know your problem. You talk like you think it makes you sound smart, makes you sound guilty." A third cruiser pulled in. Deputy Priya Anand, late 20s, body cam blinking its small, steady red light. She took in the scene. A woman in scrubs, hands on a hood, 2 officers circling, and her face shifted into something uneasy. She said nothing. She watched. Across the street, lights had come on in a couple of porches. A man in a cardigan crossed his arms and observed like it was a show. A teenager with a phone lifted it and started filming. Renata's phone buzzed in her back pocket. Once, twice, a third time, urgent, insistent. She couldn't reach it. "Popular tonight," Brennigan said. "Probably your supplier wondering where you are. That's the hospital." "Sure it is." He nodded at Tesler, who pulled out his cuffs. "Turn around. On what charge? Resisting suspicious instruments, failure to comply. Pick your favorite. I haven't resisted a single thing. I've had my hands on this car for 15 minutes. That tone right there, that's resistance. The cuffs clicked shut cold against warm skin, and the red and blue lights kept washing the oak trees in slow, indifferent waves while her phone buzzed one final time, unanswered, in a pocket she couldn't reach. On the other end of that call, inside the ER at Whitcomb Memorial, someone was dying, and the only surgeon in the region who could stop it was about to be put in the back of a patrol car. The booking room at the Hollis Bend Sheriff's Office smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet glue. Fluorescent light made everyone under it look slightly ill. Renata stood at the counter while an officer logged her belongings. A phone now showing 11 missed calls, a set of keys, a hospital lanyard, tossed back at her like litter. He looked at her badge, looked at her, looked at the badge again, opened his mouth, said nothing, moved on. Fingerprints next. Black ink pressed into the same ridges that had been inside a teenager's chest cavity that morning. Then the mugshot, face forward, no expression, a healer photographed like a threat. Brennigan walked in holding a fresh coffee in the instrument bag and dropped it on the counter like evidence from a heist. Log this. Suspicious tools recovered during vehicle search. He looked at her. Want to update your story? Tell me where you really got the fancy scalpel set? Those are registered to Whitcomb Memorial. My name is etched on 3 of them. He picked one up, turned it in the light, smirked. Etched. Cute. You know what I think? I think you're a very creative woman. The scrubs, the fake badge, the little bag of toys. Almost had me. I'd like to make my phone call. That'll have to wait. I have a legal right to one call. You have whatever rights I decide to give you in my building. Sit down. The holding cell had a steel bench, a toilet with no privacy screen, names and dates scratched into the cinder block by hands long gone. Renata sat, palms on her knees, and breathed. 10 minutes later, Brennigan appeared at the bars, coffee in hand, studying her like a zoo exhibit. Comfortable, doctor? He drew the word out, mocking, stretching it, thin. Here's what I don't get. People like you move into towns like mine and think what? That you belong here? That we roll out a red carpet? She said nothing, eyes on the wall. I've kept this county clean 19 years. Not because I'm lucky, because I know who belongs and who doesn't. I can smell the difference. He tapped the bars with his cup, a thin metallic ring. And you don't belong here. Never did. Wherever you actually came from, Atlanta, Memphis, wherever, maybe it's time you went back. She looked up slowly, no fear in her face, no anger, just the stillness of someone who had survived this exact moment more times than she could count. Are you finished? Brennigan grinned. I'm just getting started. He pushed off the bars and walked away, never once glancing at the small camera in the upper corner of the hallway, its red light blinking, recording every syllable. 12 miles away, Whitcomb Memorial was unraveling. Dr. Renata Ashworth's phone had been confiscated. The ER had called 11 times with no answer. Dr. Marisol Quinn, the attending physician on call, stood at the nurse's station with her hand white-knuckled on the counter. What do you mean she's in custody? For what? The Hollis Bend desk officer gave her nothing useful. Quinn paged hospital administration, and within minutes the call reached Whitcomb Memorial's founding patriarch, Harold Whitcomb, at home in his study, reading glasses still on, a glass of bourbon untouched at his elbow. He didn't raise his voice. He set the glasses down. Get the car. Before he could even reach the driveway, the ER doors burst open, and paramedics rushed in a stretcher carrying a woman in her 50s, lips going blue, chest barely rising, the cardiac monitor screaming an erratic, panicked rhythm. Female, 54, collapsed at a community dinner. Suspected aortic dissection. BP crashing. She's coding. Dr. Quinn ran alongside the gurney, glanced at the ID bracelet the paramedics had clipped on. Marjorie Brennigan. The name hit the room like a dropped tray of glass. They stabilized her twice, lost the rhythm, got it back weaker each time. A torn aortic valve. The kind of repair that needs a cardiothoracic specialist trained in exactly this emergency reconstruction, and there was exactly one such surgeon within 100 miles. Dr. Quinn already knew who. Get Whitcomb on the phone right now, she told the charge nurse. Tell him it isn't just about Dr. Ashworth anymore. Tell him the sheriff's wife is going to die in this emergency room if we don't get our surgeon back. The clock read 7:54. Marjorie Brannigan had less than 90 minutes, and the only person who could save her was sitting on a steel bench in a holding cell, listening to the echo of a man who had just told her she didn't belong. Harold Whitcomb's black Lincoln pulled into the Hollis Bend, lot sideways, like a statement rather than a parking job. He walked through the front doors the way men walk through buildings they've quietly owned the politics of for decades. Get me Sheriff Brannigan, now. Brannigan emerged still holding his coffee, that same self-satisfied set to his shoulders, until he registered who was standing in his lobby. Harold, what brings you out here? Whitcomb didn't offer his hand. You're holding Dr. Renata Ashworth. We've got a suspect by that name. Routine stop. Suspicious behavior. Suspicious behavior. What behavior, specifically? Vehicle didn't match. Didn't match what, Walt? Her skin? The lobby went dead quiet. Now hold on. We followed procedure. Let me tell you what your procedure has done tonight. Whitcomb's voice dropped instead of rising, which was worse. While you've been down here playing sheriff with my chief of cardiothoracic surgery, your wife was carried into my emergency room. Acute aortic dissection. She's on life support right now, and the only surgeon certified to save her is the woman you have locked in a cage because she was driving home from work. Brannigan's coffee tilted, spilled, unnoticed. That can't. Call the hospital if you don't believe me. He was already moving, keys fumbling, boots that had crunched so confidently across gravel an hour earlier, now sounding desperate down the hallway. The cell door scraped open. Renata sat exactly as he'd left her, spine straight, hands on her knees. Doctor. She stood, smoothed her scrubs, and walked past him without a glance, the way you'd walk past a chair. In the lobby, Whitcomb handed her his car keys. I'll drive. The OR team is already prepping. She took them and walked toward the door. Behind her, Brannigan's voice cracked, thin and broken. Is she going to? Renata stopped, didn't turn around. 3 full seconds passed, the longest of Walt Brannigan's life. I'll do everything I can, she walked out. Whitcomb opened the passenger door of the Lincoln. You don't owe him anything. You know that. Renata stared straight ahead at the road. I'm not doing this for him. I'm doing it because a woman is dying, and I'm a surgeon. That's what I do. The car screeched into the hospital lot 11 minutes later. Renata was out before it fully stopped, sideways through the ER doors, already at a half run. The surgical team had OR1 prepped, the big one, reserved for cases measured in heartbeats. Dr. Quinn met her in the hall, clipboard shaking slightly in her grip. She's crashing again, 3rd time, maybe 30 minutes before the tear becomes irreversible. Blood type? O negative 6 units ready. Imaging? On the screen. Tears in the ascending aorta. Root involvement. It's bad. Get her on bypass the second I scrub in. Renata scrubbed for exactly 4 minutes the way she always did, soap foaming over the same hands that had pressed against a cold hood an hour before, the same fingers rolled in black ink at a booking counter. Then she walked into OR1, where Marjorie Brannigan lay open on the table, the bypass machine humming, ready to take over a heart that could no longer manage on its own. For the next 3 hours and 9 minutes, Renata Ashworth did the thing she was built to do. She worked in total silence, precise, almost reverent, hands moving the way a pianist's hands move when thought and instinct have fully merged. She grafted, she reinforced, she closed. At 11:38, she stepped back from the table and watched the monitor steady into something strong and regular. She's stable. Let's close. She stripped off her gloves and walked out without ceremony. In the waiting room, Walt Brannigan sat hunched in a plastic chair, elbows on his knees, uniform wrinkled, eyes red. Deputies Tesler and Anand sat on either side of him in silence. Renata appeared in the doorway, sweat staining her collar, face unreadable. He stood, legs unsteady. Your wife is stable, Renata said. The surgery went well. She'll need weeks of recovery, but she's going to live. Brannigan exhaled like something inside him had finally collapsed. Doctor, I don't know how to. Don't. The word stopped him cold. 3 hours ago, you put me on the ground on a public road. You called me a thief. You told me I don't belong here. You locked me in a cage and told me to go back where I came from. His mouth opened and produced nothing. You may want to call your attorney before you say anything else to me." She turned and walked down the hall, her footsteps the only sound, and didn't look back. Behind him, Deputy Priya Anand stood quietly, walked to the administration desk, and unclipped the small black camera from her chest. "I need to speak with someone in charge. I have body cam footage that needs to be preserved. All of it." The first domino fell the next morning at sunrise. The teenager's video. They just arrested a doctor for nothing, captioned in 21 words that would outlive the sheriff's career, had been live less than 12 hours and already had 80,000 views. By noon, it had crossed 250,000. Local news ran it first, soft-pedaled. Surgeon detained during traffic stop, no charges filed. By afternoon, it wasn't local anymore. Civil rights attorney Odalis Ferreira saw it over breakfast, set down her coffee mid-bite, and called her office. "Clear my calendar. I'm taking a case." By 10, she'd filed for all body cam footage from the September stop on Coldwater Lane. By 2, she had it. Deputy Anand's footage ran 51 minutes, unedited, and it was devastating. The sneer in Brennigan's voice when he flicked the lanyard off Renata's neck, the casual cruelty of "I've kept this county clean 19 years. But the holding cell footage was worse. 9 minutes and change of a sheriff delivering, word for word, a monologue of pure contempt, captured in crisp audio nobody could dispute. Ferreira held a press conference on the courthouse steps at 4, played 30 seconds of each clip, and let the silence afterward do the rest of the talking. "Doctor, Renata Ashworth has saved hundreds of lives in this county. Last night she was arrested without cause, searched without a warrant, and subjected to racial abuse by the county's own sheriff, and then released only because that same sheriff's wife needed her hands to survive. Let that sit with you." It went national within the hour. Every network ran some version of the same headline. "Sheriff arrests black surgeon, then begs her to save his wife." The clip hit 9 million views in 2 days. A hashtag trended for 3 straight days, even after Renata had long since been released, because by then it was never really about her freedom. It was about everything the stop represented. The county commissioner's first statement, issued that morning, expressed full confidence in the department's internal review process. By that evening, after the footage, after national outrage, after 2 sitting state legislators called for an inquiry, the second statement called for an immediate independent investigation. What investigators found buried the department. 17 traffic stops involving black drivers in the past year. Not one resulted in charges. Every stop initiated by Brennigan or Tesler. Probable cause paperwork missing in 15 of the 17. An internal memo surfaced, sent by Brennigan 11 months earlier, instructing patrol units to maintain heightened awareness regarding new residents who do not reflect the established character of the community. Prosecutors didn't need it translated. The federal indictment came down on 3 counts: false imprisonment, civil rights violations, abuse of authority. The trial lasted 5 days. The jury took under 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Brennigan was sentenced to 34 months, banned from law enforcement for life, his pension gone. He stood at sentencing, looking a decade older than he had a season earlier. Deputy Tesler was terminated and convicted as an accomplice, 18 months with 12 suspended. A sentence Ferreira publicly called a slap where a hammer was owed. Ferreira filed a federal civil rights suit against Hollis Bend on Renata's behalf. The county fought it 9 days before their lawyers recommended folding. The settlement, $5.2 million. Renata accepted it, then stood behind a podium in a plain navy suit with no notes. "I'm donating the full amount to start the Ashworth Justice Fund, to cover legal defense for people who've experienced what I experienced and don't have a hospital board chairman who can come get them out. Because this happens every day to people who have no one." She didn't take questions. Deputy Priya Anand, the quiet one, the one who watched and then acted, was promoted to sergeant within the year and now teaches a mandatory course at the State Academy called What the Badge is Actually For. She opens every session by playing the first 30 seconds of her own body cam footage and letting the silence in the room do the teaching. A year later, Hollis Bend looked the same on the surface, the fences, the lawns, the same diagonal mower stripes, but underneath, something had shifted. A new sheriff, the department's first hire from outside the county in its history. A civilian oversight board reviewing every stop, every complaint, meeting monthly in the same community center on Coldwater Lane where Renata had once knelt on cold gravel. The meetings were open. People actually came. Renata still drives that same gray Honda Pilot, still keeps NPR low on the radio, still does 26 in a 30. Some habits don't disappear just because the reason for them got a little smaller. She sits on the oversight board now. She was asked, and she said yes, not because she wanted to relive any of it, but because she didn't want the next person to have to. She speaks at medical schools across the South, not about surgery, but about what it costs to take an oath that doesn't ask who deserves saving. Her son asked her once at dinner if she ever regretted staying in Hollis Bend. She thought about it longer than he expected an answer to take. No, she said, because if I leave, they win. And I didn't survive what I survived, just to let somebody else decide where I belong. Marjorie Brennigan made a full recovery, 8 weeks of rehabilitation, 3 months of cardiac therapy. She wrote Renata a handwritten letter, 3 pages, contents never made public. Neither woman has spoken about what it said. They have not been in the same room since the night of the surgery. Walt Brennigan served his sentence out of state. Upon release, he moved somewhere nobody in Hollis Bend knows, and nobody asks. His name is the kind people use now as a warning in training rooms, never in admiration. The fund Renata started took on 28 cases its first year. 22 ended in settlements or policy reform. The rest are still moving through the courts. She doesn't run it day to day. She never wanted it to be about her. She wanted it to outlast her, and it will.